Hello, and welcome back, fiber friends, to yet another episode of the Wool to Gold podcast. As you can see, we are freshly back from Marland Sheep Wool 2025. Very exciting. I had a very fun year. I have a ton to talk about when it comes to the festival. This particular video, I'm going to be showing actual footage that I took at the festival. I'm going to be talking about the fleeces that I purchased, my plans that I roughly have in terms of what I'm going to do with them and why I bought them, and if I have other fleeces that I might still be looking to buy in the near future. So before we get into all of that fun stuff and talking about, also I'm going to tell you guys kind of how to go about your first fleece sale if it's your first time and you just don't know what to look for and don't know how to assess a fleece really quickly, because it can feel really frantic in the fleece showroom. I'll show you guys a little bit of that footage so you can kind of get the idea. It get a little bit crowded, but I got a lot of really nice fleece this year and I want to show it off to you guys. Before we get into talking about the festival, I do want to tell you that if you are looking for a list of, the people I bought fiber from at the actual Marland Sheep Wool show, or like a vendor list suggestion, you're going to check out a video that I'm going to link below. So I'm posting these videos together. These are supposed to kind of go back to back. If you're just looking though for fiber suggestions on things to buy, I would recommend going to check out the other video where I actually talk about my Marland Sheep Wool haul and what I bought and roughly some of my plans with some of that fiber. This particular video is going to be very fleece focused, and it's going to be more focused on the festival experience and some of my tips if it is your first time going or you kind of want to make your trip to Marland Sheep Wool next year a little bit smoother. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is my experience at Marland Sheep Wool this year, because I feel like all of my tips kind of go alongside the experience, honestly, because this year Marland Sheep Wool really threw everything at us. So first things first, almost all of Saturday, the weather was beautiful. It was actually very warm, which means it was very busy. People, more than just the passionate yarnies and hand spinners, were out, okay? Local people were out. People who just wanted to check out something new or check out the festival were out. The weather definitely brought the masses, and so it was very busy, and obviously inside the barns with all of those bodies and, no central air conditioning for most of the areas where a lot of the festival is, it was hot. It was hot, okay? The thing about Marland Sheep Wool is it's very unpredictable. You never really know until the day of if you're going to be able to wear a sweater for the occasion or something you made for the occasion. You don't really know if you're going to need full-on rain boots and rain gear, or if you're going to want to be in shorts and a linen shirt. So here's the thing. This year at Marland Sheep Wool, it ended up throwing both of those things at us in a single day. So I did not attend Sunday, I just attended Saturday, because I'm not local and I simply did not have the luxury or the time with my job this year to attend both days. It is what it is. But the thing about Saturday was if you stayed past 4:30 on Saturday, you know that it started to hail and then flood the area. If you attended Marland Sheep Wool the 49th anniversary, the year before the big 50th anniversary that they had, then you remember Mudageddon, the year that it was just so muddy, so wet. I had heard from, I don't even know who, I just heard before I went to my first Marland Sheep Wool, which was the 49th year, that I should bring rain boots, that I should be prepared for if it was going to be really muddy and gross. So I just wore rain boots for the day, and I was so comfortable all day because I came prepared. My feet weren't wet. I had extra socks in the car. I recommend always bringing a change of clothes, ideally for the weather, for another type of weather, but bring what you think you'll need. If you think you're going to be cold, bring an extra pair of jeans. Don't bring shorts. That being said, this year I ended up I originally was in a roll-up sleeve button-up, but I ended up having to change my shirt after the fleece sale because it was really sweaty and busy in the fleece sale, and I was just really sweaty carrying all of the fleeces that I had back to my car. It's so sweaty that I was I'm just gonna change my shirt. It's getting really hot. And so I ended up having a full linen ensemble for most of the day because it was very warm. Didn't end up needing the rain boots. They were in my car. At the end of the day, the flooding wasn't even that bad compared to years previous, and the hail, like, I was so happy. I had no windshield damage, guys. God bless. That was really awesome. Maybe I'll insert a little video of the hail. Yeah, it was just super duper loud in the actual barns, kind of freaked me out a little bit. I did not like the sound, and it was so loud, it had my ears ringing. I was like genuinely concerned about ear damage. I know that sounds like so silly, but I don't know, you can't get that back, at least like with the current technology. Like, it's really hard to get that back. And so I don't know, I went to the edge of the barn where I just felt like it was a little bit less loud. Like, I would rather hear the hail outside than it hitting like the tin roofs of the barn. I was in barn 5, I remember, because I was at Puckerbush Farms for the second time, and if you want to see all the stuff that I bought, again, that's going to be a video that I link down below. It's sort of like, I don't know, the part 2 or the part 1, however you want to look at it, of this video. I was there for the second time, and I literally had to put everything down and like go to the edge of the barn because it was so freaking loud. It was terrible. But when it comes to Marland Sheep and Wool, I really think it's important to be prepared. Like, be prepared for all types of circumstances, have some rain gear in the car, have a backup pair of clothes. That brings me to my next point. Have water and have snacks, and don't be afraid to like have them in the car and go back to your car and like take a little cool down break. I feel like people don't treat like a yarn festival the same way that they do like a music festival, and yet we do a lot of the like, we're doing a lot of walking and running around. People are skipping meals. I know a lot of people who get really like anxious and nervous before like big events like this, and so like they'll skip breakfast, and then like they won't think about lunch until the lines are really long at like Marland Sheep and Wool and New York Sheep and Wool. This applies at both of them. And then like they're feeling icky in line, or they'll just like skip lunch and wait until dinner. That's not good for us, guys. That's not good for us. You gotta eat, you gotta hydrate, especially when it's 85 degrees like it was this year and we're walking around in the heat. Please remember sunscreen. Even if you think it's gonna rain all day, bring the sunscreen. Bring the sunscreen just in case, okay? It's just like a good backup call to have. And the last thing that I would suggest, for the sake of like comfort and just, you know, being eco-conscious, is don't be afraid to bring like a reusable bag, especially a really big one, so you can like carry a lot of things before you have to go drop them off at your car. Again, I do a lot of my buying at the major fiber festivals because I like to buy things in person. It's just like a personal preference of mine. And there are some things at the fiber festivals that are like a very, very good deal that you can only get at that fiber festival. And so, yeah, I don't know, I have my reasons, but if you're like me and you do a lot of buying, it's a good idea to have like a really big bag that you can put a bunch of stuff in, and then you can go back to your car, you can empty it, again, you can hydrate, sit in the AC for a while, or the heat. If it's like a year where it's really rainy and cold, like you can just warm up and change your socks and defrost your feet, you know what I mean? Like, just don't be afraid to give yourself a little bit of comfort, because it's a long day, and I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, like, yeah, it's just a yarn festival. Like, they don't think about like taking care of themselves the same way they would at other types of like large busy events, like a con or something like that. I feel like it's very similar to a Comic-Con, especially if you are like, some people are in like historical getup, they are wearing like things that they made themselves. Like, I don't know, we need to take care of ourselves. Anyway, that is kind of the gist of the tips that I have for, in general, Marland Sheep and Wool, but also just like fiber festivals in general. I feel like you can apply those same tips to New York Sheep and Wool. Again, comfortable shoes. Comfortable shoes are super important, just like at a county fair. You know, you're doing a lot of walking, and sometimes you're doing a lot of carrying too. It can be quite an arm workout, so if you don't have that ability, or you're just not like, you're just like, I don't want to have to carry things all day, people bring little carts too, which I also think is super duper helpful. And again, I see them all over, so you definitely wouldn't be the only person with that kind of setup. Moving on to the festival itself, there are a ton of different things to do. Okay, so I know a lot of people tend to highlight like the vendors' barns, which, don't get me wrong, is a great part of Marland Sheep and Wool. I love, love, love shopping at Marland Sheep and Wool. It's fantastic. However, it's not the only thing going on. So there are lots of educational events going on throughout the festival. There are ticketed ones that you do have to sign up for in advance, but there are also like family activities. There are historical demonstrations. This year there was lots of music. There was like a historical like fiddle and like fiddle contest type of thing, and there is always like a sheep herding demonstration. Oftentimes there is like the sheep show ring where they are doing like competitions. On Sunday they usually do like a thing where they highlight all of the breeds and they tell you about each of the breeds, like different information and history about them, which is really cool. If you want to like learn your sheep, that's a really good way of like seeing the different sheep breeds side by side, similar to like an AKC event. I think that's just a highlight of any yarn festival in general too, is like going to see the sheep and the shepherds in the big barns, right? Because if you look around, you'll start to notice very quickly that like all of these sheep are not the same at all. There are also certain areas that are specifically dedicated, like there are the general barns with all the sheep that are competing. There are some barns where I think they're those like longer barns that are kind of side by side with the vendor barns. They also have sheep in them, and I don't know what makes those different. I don't know if those are just like also competition sheep, or oftentimes I see people who are looking to like buy sheep talking to the people in there, so maybe they're like breeders and things like that. And then usually in one of the main like exhibition hall things, there is an area where they are demoing sheep shearing, which I caught a little bit of a clip of. I'll insert that here at some point.
Some density, like a color pattern, so very nice shoe line there.
And there's also a highlight for all of the conservation breeds. So seeing the conservation breeds is a really, really cool experience. I think it best highlights how different all the sheep can be, because you have hair sheep, you have fine wool sheep, you have these really interesting primitive breeds. There's everything. There's everything. I love heritage breed and conservation breed sheep. And I think seeing them is really fun, especially because you get to know like genuinely different breeds are just naturally like more friendly or like more wary of individuals and new experiences. The different like sizes of sheep and their different personalities and the way that they look, I don't know, just their different builds. I love like sheep faces are so diverse. They can be so like round and like soft like a Lincoln. They kind of look like a teddy bear, or they can be really like, oh, they can have these like really lovely big Romanesque noses that I also really adore. I think that's something that I really want to highlight in this video, is that Marland Sheep and Wool is not just about buying things. It's great, again, to give shepherds our money. Love to do it. Give artists our money. Love to do it. However, it's also about learning. It's also about learning. There's a lot of really fun, free stuff to do and see. Talking to a shepherd doesn't cost anything, and you can learn so much. I got to talk to some of the South Down competitors this year, and the sheep that were competing in I think it was the naturally colored South Downs. They were so precious, and they were so well taken care of and beautiful. It's so fun. It's really one of the highlights of the festival. So don't be afraid to attend, especially if you're local and you're like, oh, I don't have like a ton of money to spend. That's okay. Just go hang out. Go meet an alpaca.
Today, the scene of fashion show by participants in the Marland Make It With Wool program. You will be impressed with the talent and skills of both the youth and
there's also no rule against going and browsing, and then if you see something you like but you know it's not within your budget right now, you can take a card, you can put your hands on it and make sure that it's something that you actually want to buy in the future. Like, you can use it as more of a research experience. And then one of the events too that I think is really great at both Marland Sheep and Wool and New York Sheep and Wool is the auction event, right, where they auction off equipment. This goes for like sheep equipment and also like fiber arts equipment like looms, spinning wheels. Some people, I've seen like sheepskins, people's fiber stashes, drop spindles. There were some really crazy looms this year, and I'm going to insert a little footage of the Dobby loom. So something really cool that I didn't know, again, I was walking around the auction area, and I didn't end up bringing anything home from the auction this year, was just how it goes. Everything that I wanted ended up being sold before the auction even started, which is something that, you know, it's an auction, you run that risk. Some people buy on site, and that's okay. One really cool thing about going around the auction is you often learn about the equipment that you don't really know about. So there's this really cool loom, and I was like, this is really crazy and super cool, and I have no idea how it works, but I really want to know how. And so there was somebody else who was like looking at it and like super impressed, and she clearly knew more about it, so I was asking her some questions, and I learned that it's a not very common loom, and you use like the metal pegs on it to like set the actual pattern, and then you like turn that big metal, it looked like a submarine like thing to me. I don't know why it reminded me of submarine so much, but you just turn that thing like back and forth, and that's how you get the loom to do the weaving. And I thought that was really cool, super crazy. And I never would have seen something like that or known it existed if I didn't go to the auction. So I do really recommend just going, especially if you've just never seen an auction in general. Like, it's really cool. It's just neat to see. It's really fun even if you don't participate. And so that's also a highlight of Marland Sheep and Wool. And now we're getting to the portion of the video that's definitely going to be the longest and probably take up the most time. But I knew I would talk a long time about this because I just care a lot about it. Something that I recommend that everybody go and check out, again, even if you're not in the business of buying sheep fleece, if you have no reason to buy sheep fleece or even look at them at all, this is the thing. Everybody does have a reason to go and look at the fleece sale, even if you are not going to buy a whole fleece, even if you're somebody who only buys yarn. And here's my pitch, because when you go to the fleece sale, one of the first things you see when you walk through the door is this like big, I'll insert a video of it. Sometimes it's like a chart. The way they did it this year, I think I liked the way they set it up with all the different papers. Essentially like a big display of all the different breeds and a little bit of like information about them, if I'm remembering correctly, and you actually get to put your hands on the fiber and like get like lock and yarn examples. And I think that that's just really helpful for anybody who is looking to broaden their horizons when it comes to like the kind of yarn that they want to buy, right? I talk a lot on the channel about trying to buy something other than merino. If you really would like to do that, but you don't even know where to start, like you're like, what is a blue-faced Leicester? Like, what is a Leicester long wool? What's a Lincoln long wool? Like, what kind of yarn should I even be looking for? Marland Sheep and Wool is a research opportunity. Not only can you go to some of the different, like, vendors who do offer rare breeds at Marland Sheep and Wool, Ross Farm, Solitude Wool, those are two of my favorites, but there are plenty and plenty of conservation breed providers at Marland Sheep and Wool if you know where to look. You can go to the fleece sale and actually put hands on a bunch of different examples of those wools. I also think it's just like a fun thing to see. Like, it's really cool. It's really unique. I don't really know anywhere else where you can go and put your hands in a bunch of garbage bags filled with wool and really get to be like, really get to understand like the sheep and the wool and what it looks like before it becomes all the breeds.
I'm going to wait for you outside where it's a little cooler.
We saw, and Zane and I made a lot of comments last year, we saw places
that didn't have staple length or didn't have consistency or weren't, uniform enough or clean enough or didn't. I mean, and there were still a lot in here that I mentioned it earlier that I think a lot of it has to do with.
And the last thing I'm going to talk about before I actually show you guys all of the fleeces that I got, because I know you definitely want to see them, is if it's your very first fleece sale. So one thing I do recommend, if you really are going to buy at least one fleece at the sale, really try to have a rough idea of what you want. Like, I'm not saying you have to decide on, like, be dead set on a single breed. I actually don't recommend that, because you never really know if there's only going to be, like, 1 or 2 fleeces, and if neither of those fleeces are exactly what you're looking for from that breed, then obviously you're going to need to pivot if you still want to bring something home. But I do recommend kind of having a rough idea of what you want. Like, if you are like, I definitely want a medium fleece versus I definitely want a fine wool fleece, don't, I mean, it's very unlikely that you would accidentally bring home a, Cormo if you were trying to get like a Navajo churro or vice versa. But it's just good to know a little bit about what you're getting yourself into. It can be very intimidating when you first walk in, but a lot of the fleeces, like the way it's organized, it's not just random. They usually are organized by breed and then wool type and color as well. So like there's usually like a natural color table, and then there's like a fine, medium, coarse table, and then there's usually a section in the middle that's super big with a bunch of like different breeds that you can like go section by section, right? And that's super helpful if you are looking for something super specific, like a Jacob. That's something really common that people look for because Jacobs have the spots, and so you can turn one fleece into like a whole sweater without like actually having to dye any yarn, right? You can do color work with just like the natural colors that you're provided with, which is super rad. But that's just an example of how fleece sales can be set up to make things a little bit easier. And then if it is your very, very first time, it can be a little bit crowded. Don't be afraid to be like, excuse me, like you might have to squeeze past people. It can be a little busy, and people do want the best fleece, right? They're often looking for something and they want to get it before somebody else who might be looking for a similar thing. So sometimes tensions can get a little high in the fleece sale, the fleece tent. I'm not saying it happens all the time, but I have seen it happen before. And so try to keep your cool while you're in there. Don't be afraid to get there early if you really, 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 really want that first dibs. Get there super early. That's going to help you ensure you get what you want. I definitely got there pretty early this year. And another really good tip is, frankly, like 98% of the people there are like looking out for the other people there, right? So if there is especially like a volunteer for the fleece sale at Marland Sheep and Wool, New York Sheep and Wool, New Jersey Sheep and Wool, if there are volunteers / attendants, they are there to help you if you are looking for a specific thing and you need some guidance, or you're like, I am so lost and I just need someone to show me where to start. Like, they are a really good reference and a really good starting point. They'll bring you in the right direction. Ping tests, P-I-N-G, ping tests are a really quick way of checking to make sure that a fleece is structurally sound, that there's not a break or something like that in the fleece. And then when I show you guys the fleeces that I brought home from Marland Sheep and Wool, I'm also going to give you a few tips on things to look for. But essentially, once you have established, like, you found a fleece, it is the price that you want, it's the color that you want, it is the structure that you want, you took one of the locks out from the top, or perhaps the lock was already sitting on top. If somebody else looked at the fleece before you, oftentimes there will be like just a thing of locks like this sitting right on top, easy to access for you to do your own ping test on it, right? I have no idea how well you guys can hear that, but hopefully you can hear some of what I just did. Everything looks the way you want it to. The tips look fine. There's no cotting or anything like that. You do want to kind of like open up the fleece and look into the center just to make sure that there's not an overwhelming amount of VM or staining or something that you don't want to deal with. If you have no idea what VM is, it's vegetable matter. It's just like dry hay, twigs, whole acorns. I don't know. You find weird stuff in fleeces sometimes, little bits of just like random stuff. I found a like little portion of an ear tag in a sheet fleece once. Like things just end up in there sometimes. And so, you know, you open it up and you look to make sure it's something that you are willing to deal with, because some people, myself included, VM, especially really excessive types of certain VM, are just like an instant no-go. Not to say that like I can't deal with a certain amount of VM. I really don't mind that much. But certain types of like flaky hay that break up when you try to remove them are just, they're a no for me. One thing that will also help you when you go into the fleece sale is knowing how to read one of these tags. So different sales have different tags, but generally, if you look closely enough, you can find all the same information on any tag. So you can find out the breed of sheep that it is. You can find out the cost of it, if it was coated, which that just means like some sheep, I'll insert a photo over here, some sheep wear coats, right, to protect them from dirt and VM. Some sheep don't. Those coats are not cheap. Obviously, they cost money, and you have to change them out as the sheep fleece grows. And obviously, certain sheep fleeces grow a lot over a year, and so you need a lot of coats. So you understand that this can be a really like taxing investment on farmers, because a lot of people are like, why don't all farmers who raise their sheep for fiber just coat their sheep? Because it's expensive, and it comes with its own risk, because cotton fiber is kind of a pain in the butt to work with, and a lot of spinners will avoid it. But at the bottom of this, you can see you have like the address and the actual name of the farm if you want to contact them again. I love these little tags. I always keep them and I put them in my journals. This is going to be what you want to look at first glance, just to make sure that a fleece, that none of the details on here are like instant no-goes for you, right? If it's a breed that you're like, oh, I already have that breed, I really don't want more of it, you're going to put that bag aside. If you're like, I only want coated sheep, you're going to have to look for that on the tag. You know, there are also certain stickers and things that Marland Sheep Wool has that will indicate things as well. So things like the Maryland flag, for it being like a Maryland fleece, one that was raised in the state. They also have a 4-H tag. It's usually a 4-leaf clover, and that also applies to New York Sheep and Wool. They do the same thing with like indicating when it's a 4-H fleece. This year at Marland Sheep and Wool, there was like one of the most impressive fleeces ever. As like, I think it was the silent auction 4-H fleece this year, because at a lot of fleece sales, the like best fleeces, the creme de la creme, the first place winners of each of the categories will be in a silent auction. And the 4-H fleece was very impressive this year. I was very impressed by it. But anyway, when I go fleece shopping at this point in my spinning career, I really try to prioritize the heritage breeds and the conservation breeds, and I did exactly that when I went fleece shopping this year. So let me show you guys what I got. Alright, so the first fleece I'm going to show you guys is the down fleece that I got, the Shropshire Down. So if you're not familiar, Shropshire is from like is it Downs County? Is it a county in England? Generally they're considered like quote-unquote meat sheep, but the fiber often resists felting or complete, like really resists felting. Like there's some down fiber that I tried to felt in the washer, dryer, hand felted it, put it through everything, and it still like doesn't hold together like a felted piece of fabric should. And so the fiber's really unique. It can take color in a variety of ways. It usually doesn't take color like as well as some of the more like lustrous wools, but it has some really unique capabilities, and I would like to blend it with some stuff and maybe like, I don't know, I don't make socks, but like make a sock type blend. I don't know. I don't really know exactly what my plans are for the Shropshire yet. I do think I want to dye it with indigo specifically though. I don't know why. I'm feeling the indigo. So I paid $67.50 for this fleece. It's about 4.5 pounds, $15 per pound. It is not coated. It was grown in Pennsylvania by Riverton Farm LLC. It is labeled as white and down type medium. So yeah, this is the fleece and these are the locks. So generally, Shropshire fleeces can range from anywhere from like 4.5 pounds to 10 pounds. Obviously, this is definitely like a smaller fleece. The rams can be up to 14 pounds of fleece, that's pretty hefty. Generally, the staple length is 2.5 to 4 inches. If I had to take a guess, this is definitely closer to 4. I'd say 3.5. 3.5. That looks 3.5. I don't know. It is a beautiful fleece. It's very, very, very soft. That was one of the things that definitely drew me to the fleece. I do think that much like most down wools and like medium type wools, I think that it is going to wash really easy and scour really easy. Generally the micron count ranges from anywhere from 24.5 to 33 microns. Again, this sample is very soft. There were definitely some like coarser down wools there as well, but I think I got lucky with this sample. I think this fleece is going to be, frankly, a pleasure to wash and a pleasure to work with. Just like most meat sheep, it is not overly greasy either, so I'm hoping I don't lose like a ton of weight. So when you wash a fleece, obviously you lose some of the weight because lanolin is pretty heavy, especially in the fine wools. You can lose up to 50%, sometimes more. I'm hoping, because again, this is like a medium down wool, that it is not going to lose a ton of weight once it's washed. I'll get back to you guys on that. When I was shopping for this fleece, again, I always look in the center of the fleece to see like what the VM situation looks like, what the whole fleece looks like. But on this bag, if you look closely, it actually says low VM on the outside. And it gives you some of the details on the outside of the bag, so you don't have to go digging through the whole thing. Some bags of wool definitely have more information than others. So like this bag of wool here, you can see came with like an additional little card. This fleece was rinsed before shearing. I'm going to do more research about that. I'm pretty sure it's probably rinsed for like a show or something like that. But I am curious to see how that impacts like the fiber washing up. It looks incredibly clean for a fleece that's not coated. And it's so funny because here on the little card, I'll read what it says. It says, number 16, white, fall apart, easy to pull apart, 6 to 7 inches long, nice luster, tips got a little dirty before shearing. If this is a little dirty, I don't know, I don't want to pull out like a whole clump, but I really do because it's just so pretty. It's just so pretty. Like, if this is a little dirty, that's unhinged. This is incredibly clean fiber. I think that this is going to be an easy scour because I really just have to get the grease off. Like, it's not dirty. I'm not going to cold soak this. I am going to cold soak all of these fleeces except for the Teeswater because it's just so dang clean already. Like, I'm going to hold it up for you guys so you can see. Do you see? You see how clean that is? That's crazy. I can't wait to dye this up. I'm going to do a bunch of really fun natural dyes on this. I paid $75 total, which is actually really good for a Teeswater fleece, okay? Teeswaters are pricey fleece, for good reason, but they do usually come at a pretty high cost. So it was $30 per pound, so I got 2.5 pounds. Normally something like this does carry a fair amount of like grease and dirt, but again, since it was rinsed, like hopefully we don't lose as much weight when we wash it, but it is what it is, okay? I'm just excited I got my hands on it. I think this is something really special. I did want to talk a little bit about like general Teeswater information with this. When I go to process each of these fleeces, I'm going to do like an in-depth video where I talk about like the history of the breed and a lot more information about like the farms and all of that stuff. But for Teeswaters in general, usually the fleeces are like 7.5 to 18 pounds. So one might assume that this fleece has either been like, it's been pulled apart, so it has been pre-separated by the shepherd, or it could just be a lamb. It could be a young sheep. So Teeswater, they are big sheep when they are fully grown. However, it does take them a while to mature. They are not quick matures. They do take a while to grow to the size that they end up being, just like Lincoln Long Wools, who are also like not quick to finish. It takes a few years, and so this could just be like a lamb's fleece. That's very possible, especially based on how fine the locks are. So speaking of, generally the Teeswater locks are 12 to 15 inches and 30 to 36 microns. So one thing I wanted to talk about is those staple lengths can really be different if your shearing schedule is different. So like Teeswaters that are sheared once a year versus twice a year are obviously going to have like different lock lengths. But you can seek out different shepherds if you're looking for something like extra long or a little bit shorter. Generally, lambs have shorter, slightly shorter staple lengths, especially with like the really long fibered breeds like Teeswater and Wensleydales. So if you feel like that like 7-8 inch staple length is really intimidating to you, then I might recommend seeking out like a lamb or something like that for your first lock spin. And again, this fleece is holding together well, so I can kind of show you like opening it up and unfolding it a little bit and looking inside to see what the condition of everything is. It looks beautiful right off the bat. There are not a ton of signs of second cuts, and again, when we ping test it, ooh, this one has a really good ping. This is hopefully you'll be able to hear this well. And again, a ping test is not like the be-all end-all of knowing if a fiber is right for you or if a fleece is right for you, or if there aren't any faults with the fleece. Like, there could be other faults with the fleece, there could be other things that you're not seeing, like again, VM I've talked about, but also if it is a ewe and it has been used for mating and they use those like chalk or wax markers, and sometimes that stains the fleece, and that can be something that you'll see like blue, red, green. Sometimes, in almost all cases, it washes out during scouring, but it can be something that like would be a turn off for certain people. I don't know, it's just things to consider, right? But a ping test is just a good start, and it will help prevent you from getting like a really weak fleece. And generally, right, because I talk a lot on this channel about how, right, a lot of wool is good wool. A lot of wool gets a bad name, despite being perfectly good and perfectly usable and being able to make great yarn. But something about a fleece that has like, say, a break in it, that's a great example, is that when you're carding it up or combing is a little bit differently, but I like to card. So when you're carding it up, things like heavy second cuts or breaks in fleeces are going to cause like a lot of neps. So it's going to cause inconsistent prep. It's just going to make your whole life a little bit harder. And so yeah, that's just a good place to start in assessing a fleece. And I recommend, if you want more details on how to do it, again, there are plenty of videos online about how to do a ping test. But gosh, I just can't stop looking at that beautiful fiber. Alrighty, and then the last two fleeces that I bought are the same exact breed. They are from the same farm. They're Rommeldales. So if you are already familiar with sheep, you know that like CVM and Rommeldales, some shepherds and some like associations consider them the same breed. Some people feel that CVM's the colored or natural colored non-white variation of the Rommeldale is sort of its own like group or category. I'm pretty sure in most recent years, like this past year or 2 years, they decided that they're the same again, that it's all under the Rommeldale category. I don't know. When I do a video of processing these sheep fleeces, I'm gonna go over the history and I'll look into it for you guys and do like a shortened version so you can understand all of the sheep tea. But what we have here is 7 pounds, yeah, 7 pounds of white Rommeldale fleece. So I'm not really sure what these colors of ribbons translate to. One of them has a red ribbon, one of them has a blue ribbon. The blue ribbon one is the 4-pounder, so it cost me $60. Both of them were $15 a pound. They are from North Carolina, Wrenwood Farm. And yeah, the breed is Rommeldale. Neither of them were coated. Both of them are beautiful. The one with the red ribbon is 3 pounds. These are fine wool sheep, okay? So I realistically like will more than likely end up with something closer to like 3.5 pounds of clean wool once this is all scoured up. And so as a result, that's why I bought so much more of this than I did everything else. Frankly, if there was more that I wanted to buy, I was going to pick it up, but right now I am still trying to organize some Hog Island fleeces. That is the one other thing that like I'm gonna let myself bring into the collection, probably as part of like a birthday present to myself. I would really like to work with some Hog Island. It's something that I've really had up in my noggin for a minute. But yeah, these are the fleeces. Let me pull a lock from each of them and I'll show them to you and talk a little bit more about like the general weights and micron counts and things like that of the Rommeldale sheep. All right, side by side, civilian eyes, I'm sure that they don't really look all that different from one another. But let's talk about what makes these fleeces a little bit different from each other, because I do think it's interesting. So this is from Big Blue, the 4-pounder, the one with the blue tag on it. As you can see, she's a little bit dirtier, but nothing a cold soak can't handle. The staple length is a little bit shorter than this other one here. I'd probably put this at like 3 inches. This one's closer to like 3.5. The last CVM fleece I had was definitely like pushing 4, a little bit over 4 inches. So I'm really excited to work with something with just like a little bit of a shorter staple, just because I do love carding and shorter staples are great for carding. So general information about Rommeldales, usually the fleeces range from 6 to 15 pounds. So these probably came from younger Rommeldales. I don't think though that they're lamb fleeces. Those are usually a little bit, even a little bit smaller than these are. Usually the staple length ranges anywhere from 3 to 6 inches, so it can be on the longer side, making it a really easy to spin fine wool, right? The very short staple length of the merino is one of the reasons that it can be a tricky spin for beginners. And so something that is 4.5 inches is going to be a little bit easier for a beginner. Usually the micron count is 21 to 25 microns. However, I don't know if the folks over at Bolayers has ever gotten the micron count tested on their CVM, but I am fully convinced that it is lower than 21 microns. Fully convinced. Bolayers is, that's like creme de la creme CVM fiber. That is how a fiber flock should feel. When it comes to the CVM breed. They're just like a really impressive standard. But the small red, as we're going to call it, small red is slightly longer, and this has kind of a more traditional fine wool feel. So I do think it's interesting that they both do have like a pretty interesting like crimp pattern. They're a little bit different from one another. I feel like this one is definitely a little bit finer than this sample here. And it definitely has some of those like fine wool elements. This fleece is definitely like a little bit greasier as well than this fleece is. But yeah, I'm really excited to wash these up. These are gonna take dye really, really nicely. Again, I'm going to naturally dye them. I'm not sure what colors I'm gonna do for the CVM. Obviously, again, the Shropshire, I'm gonna do indigo, but the CVM, I don't know, maybe I'll do a variety of colors. We're gonna see. I'm definitely gonna turn it into some bats. Anyway, I think that's going to be all for this video, folks. If you have any questions about these fleeces, if you want to know more about them, feel free to drop those questions down below. Thank you again for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video.